Holy fucking shit. I literally decide out of the blue to start making rant videos again last night. I recorded a couple, I set them up, I established them. I decided to get back into the YouTube rant scene. I decided to get back into bitching about video games. I decided to bitch about Cyberpunk, about Final Fantasy 16, about PS5, about the superiority of the Super Nintendo. I did all this, I did everything, and the very next day, I wake up, I look at my phone, start planning out my novel for the day, right? Rabbit Hole is almost done. I start planning to work on my book, and I immediately am hit by an absolute bombshell. Zenimax Media is being acquired by Microsoft. Xbox owns Bethesda. Holy fucking shit. PlayStation is no longer going to get The Elder Scrolls. PlayStation is no longer going to get Fallout. Xbox owns Obsidian and Bethesda. Like, this is probably the biggest acquisition that Xbox has made in the past several years, right? Of course, they've been acquiring studios left and right. I know they acquired Double Fine. I know they acquired Obsidian. I know they acquired, maybe a bunch of other studios. They're basically trying, I think, to buy a lot of, all the good Western studios. Please understand I'm saying, quote-unquote good, because there are no good Western studios. Of course, Bethesda has recently put out, Fallout 4, and The Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be disappointing. Starfield is going to be disappointing. Doom Eternal, I'm told, was disappointing. I don't have any optimism in Bethesda, really, truly putting out a good game. But this isn't necessarily about putting out a good product. This isn't necessarily about making a good video game. Xbox isn't going to get good video games because of this. What is going to happen is that one of the biggest studios in the world, one of the studio behind one of the biggest games of last generation, Skyrim, they're not going to be on PlayStation. One of the biggest, most successful, most iconic video games of the past decade, Skyrim, is no longer going to see release on PlayStation hardware. It's entirely going to be an Xbox and PC thing. Maybe a Nintendo Switch thing. Maybe it returns to Nintendo consoles. Maybe Xbox will port to Nintendo consoles. But the primary thing I expect to see from this is that we're no longer going to see these games on PlayStation. No Doom, no Dishonored, no Fallout, nothing. Xbox has acquired a gaming studio, and in order to prevent PlayStation from utilizing it all, this is going to be a studio that won't be on PS Plus, that you can't play on PlayStation, that you won't just be able to. If you're going to play Bethesda games going forward, you're going to need an Xbox or a PC. Not a PlayStation. And this, I think, is going to be a big blow against PlayStation in the long run. Once the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, once that starts becoming a thing, wow. Once that starts becoming a thing, we're going to see there's less and less reason to own a PlayStation all the time. Back in the 90s, you bought the PlayStation brand for the big third-party games. Sure, they were terrible, but you didn't know that when you first were told by the gaming media that the CD-based format would be better for gaming than the stale, outdated cartridge format of the N64, right? You didn't know those games had severe problems, but with Xbox limiting these third-party games, PlayStation is losing its appeal. You know what I mean? Like, we're reaching the point now where Xbox and Nintendo are going to have their own unique titles that differentiate itself from the PlayStation brand. And those exclusive titles are indeed better than the PlayStation games. I don't know how anyone can seriously deny this at this point. Like, despite the carefully constructed narrative by the media, PlayStation does have the weakest exclusive lineup. Like Microsoft may just be acquiring like major third-party studios, but it's better than what Sony is doing with like The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last Guardian and like Final Fantasy VII. Well, that's not a first-party studio. Well, exclusive. Like, Sony, it feels like they can't afford the companies they want to buy. Because they were talking about acquiring Rockstar a while back, I think. And then, like, Rockstar wanted, like, $12 billion. And Sony was like, oh, no, we can't afford that. So, GTA is still multiplat. GTA is still coming to Xbox. Meanwhile, Xbox is going to prevent releases of future PlayStation content. It's going to prevent releases of games on their platforms to Sony. Of course, you have like minor games. You have like Minecraft. You have like Cuphead. They seem to be fine with like indie games coming over eventually. But even like timed exclusives, like it took like Cuphead 2 years. Who the fuck is going to wait 2 years to play Cuphead? Like, if you want to play Cuphead, you're going to just do it on the Xbox, right? You're just going to do it on the PC. You're just going to do it on Nintendo Switch. Like, why would you wait 2 years for the Elder Scrolls 6 and, like, buy it on PS5? Like, the consoles are basically... We're kind of reaching the point again where consoles are going to be unique. Like, no longer will they be basically the same with, like, the same third-party games while, like, Nintendo is doing their own thing. Like, Xbox is going to have these studios that they're just going to acquire and prevent timely releases on PlayStation. They're basically playing dirty. They're basically doing what Sony used to do in the 90s in like paying off like Konami and Square Enix and not support Nintendo or Sega. Like, Microsoft is basically taking the steps to stay competitive. Like, we've kind of seen that point. We're kind of reached that point, and this is going to lead to a bigger divide between these companies. Like, you are going to see them sell less and less and less. Well, in part because they're not as good, but in part because you're going to see a significant chunk of the gaming audience start to turn against them. Like, you are going to see PlayStation fanboys come out and declare like Bethesda to be completely dead, completely irrelevant, completely pointless. And that's not exactly true. Like, I've been saying that Bethesda has been bad for years now, right? Like, of course, this isn't saying that Bethesda is good, but you're going to have more and more, it's going to be debatable. You know what I mean? More and more people are going to like turn against Bethesda for like the stuff they're doing, the stuff they've been saying, and being more critical of them. And with that, it's going to be more and more people are going to bring up the problems with Bethesda more and more and more. You won't see this situation with Doom Eternal where people pretended it was good for a really long time just because they had nothing new to play. Like, you're going to see a bunch of PlayStation fans come out and say that, like, oh, the game isn't as good as the ones that were on PlayStation. And of course, Xbox fans are going to argue about that, and of course, it's going to go back and forth. And the game isn't going to sell as well because there's going to be more discussion about the quality of the game, and because of the console warring, right? The very artificial console war, which is just PlayStation trying to stay relevant, but it's I expect what Microsoft is trying to do. They're trying to leave the console space. They're trying to leave, and they want to still make money off of gaming. So they're just going to acquire these studios and then just release all these things for the hardware space. Actually, they're going to release all this thing for PC and Nintendo Switch eventually, right? That's the long-term plan. But in the short term, I think we're going to see limited PlayStation releases. You're not going to see Xbox owned games on PlayStation right away. You're going to see timed Xbox exclusives. Like Phil Spencer isn't going to want to see like the major Bethesda games on PlayStation right away. The quality is going to get worse. That's kind of a given. Bethesda was already kind of bad with like the Fallout 4s and stuff like that. Yeah. Any hope that anyone had that Fallout would get better with 5, with like future entries after 76, basically out the window, basically over. It's not going to happen. There is no way at all that Bethesda is going to get... There is no way at all that Fallout 4 is ever going to recover. Like, there is no way at all that they're ever going to deviate from Fallout 4. Like, you know how Fallout 4 was, like, literally the worst thing ever and really, really shitty? Like I remember playing it on stream and just being told by people that this is the worst thing ever. And I don't agree. I don't agree with that because I was never a Fallout fan. But like, I can see what people mean. Like, I can see why people hated that game. I can see why people dropped it. It's gonna get worse. Like, we've seen this with Scalebound. We've seen this with like countless other Microsoft-owned IPs. Like, they can't maintain a video game franchise. Like, of course, their issues are kind of different than PlayStation's. You know what I mean? But I think they're a bit more controlling, whereas like PlayStation kind of just lets developers do whatever they want unless it's like a censorship related. It's gonna get worse for Bethesda. I expect in another 10 years they're gonna be like Rare. They're not gonna be putting out shit. Oh, by the way, Rare was always better than Bethesda. Let's be real here. Microsoft has destroyed better studios before. You know what I mean? I do expect that like Bethesda is going to lose their reputation for quality products with the Microsoft acquisition. They're probably going to double down on stuff like paid mods and stuff like that and make it more ridiculous. Maybe cancel new IPs, casualize Doom and Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, make it more action based, strip away more and more RPG elements. Anything anybody liked about Bethesda, you're not going to see in the next 10 years. Like, we have a precedent for this. Like, again, the Rare situation. Like, do you really expect that Microsoft is going to allow Bethesda to continue, like, making RPGs? No. Normies don't like RPGs. Normies want pure action games. They want sex scenes. They want like all this stuff. They don't want like role playing. Like what the fuck are you talking about? Like role playing, that's for nerds. That's for geeks. Like real gamers, hardcore normies, the chads of the gaming world. They just want to shoot stuff. They just want to fight stuff with swords. Like that's kind of their mindset. Like they won't allow developers to make something that would be appealing to their audience. And I do expect this is probably going to kill the Elder Scrolls 6, like in and of itself. Like we're going to see like major changes. Changes to the formula in that one. It's going to get worse. They're going to strip away content. I have no optimism for them. Bethesda is basically dead, but I'm hoping this acquisition will lead to the decline in increased irrelevancy of the PlayStation brand. Like, PlayStation losing a big IP like this is a good thing. Like, PlayStation losing a big brand like this is a great thing. Like, the less that PlayStation has to hype up every time, like every year, like the less titles they get, like the less relevant they'll be, right? I mean, I know PlayStation fans don't actually play video games, but like, if a significant chunk of the big games coming out every year are not coming to PlayStation, like, nobody is going to be able to convince themselves that PlayStation is the best option for games. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to look at, like, you know, Zelda, Mario, Metroid, Splatoon, Animal Crossing on Nintendo, and then Bethesda, Obsidian, Halo on Xbox and then think to themselves, yeah, I want to go and play The Last of Us Part 2. It's not going to happen. Like, it simply isn't going to happen. Like, the age of PlayStation exclusives being promoted as, like, the best in the industry are basically over. Like, it was always kind of fake and gay, right? The way they came out and tried to say that, like, all this stuff is, like, The Last of Us is the best game ever made, man. It's one of the best ever. It was always fake. It was always forced. And now that, like, consoles seem to be having exclusives again, they're not going to be able to justify. They're not going to be able to continue to pretend because like the real interest, the real enthusiasm, the real disappointment, I should say, it's going to be an Xbox. Like, Xbox is going to be pumping out these things like left, right, and center, and they're going to be bad, they're going to be disappointing, they're going to be underwhelming, but they're going to be available on PC, and I think, in spite of everything, they should still be better than The Last of Us Part 2. I can't imagine Bethesda being worse than The Last of Us Part 2. Like, I don't think that's going to happen for a very long time, or ever. Like, you have to be a very fucked up person to make something as bad as The Last of Us Part 2 and think it's acceptable. Like, The Last of Us Part 2 was, like, messed up on, like, a fundamental aspect. Like, I don't think it's, I don't think it can be topped, really, in that regard. You have to, like, I don't even think you could try and make a game worse than The Last of Us Part 2. So, alright, so final thoughts. PlayStation, one step closer to the grave, man. Like, every passing day, like, they just keep declining further. They just keep losing more and more games. They keep losing more and more relevancy. They keep losing more and more things to be excited about when it comes to the PS5. Like, losing Bethesda in and of itself, just, that's like what? Like, you know, one of their biggest hits, like one of the biggest video game franchises. You know, two of the biggest. Skyrim, Fallout, and all the other ones that people don't actually care about, like the Evil Within, Dishonored, Prey. Like, again, Bethesda was going downhill anyway, but yeah, like that's kind of my take on this, is that, like, yeah, the less games that PlayStation has, the less games that people have to buy for it, the better. Like, if all you have to play on, in the end, if all you have to play on PlayStation is PlayStation exclusives, nobody is going to want PlayStation.